So our topic for today is here it's called infinite patience. How to create patience.
Is that, what do you mean that's here it's called? In whose book? The marriage book?
Essentially, we're continuing with the marriage counseling, but obviously this is a very general topic. It's not, obviously it's very important for marriage, but it's very important for everything. So, as we'll see, this is very much connected to specifically Elul, to the month of Elul, more than all the other months. And I'll say in short that this, right away, so we get a general look at what we're going to be discussing, is that it's related to the mazel, the zodiac sign of Elul, which is Virgo. And unlike what usually people think, the Virgo is not a young woman. She's actually an old woman.
I didn't know she was a woman.
Not only is she an older woman, she's also a mother. She's the mother figure, actually. So even though it's called Virgo because of various reasons, it's really the month of the woman. Elul. Right, so we're going to discuss that. Exactly. So Shoshana already said part of what we'll begin with. No, it's fine. There's plenty of things to discuss. That in order to explain the significance of Elul and what we do, everybody knows that Elul is like a month of reckoning. You're supposed to take stock of everything. It's like the way it's usually explained is that you sort of do an accounting of everything you've done during the year, and you're supposed to draw some conclusion at the end. And most people don't relate well to that for a very good reason, because you'll always come out deficient. That's the nature of taking an accounting, because we're not angels. And if the purpose is to figure out what was wrong, I'm not sure I need Elul for that. I know that all year long.
Right.
It's true that during Elul I can take, and give myself the grand slam of my deficiencies. But that's why people don't relate to Elul well, because they take it as this is the month in which everything that's wrong is highlighted. And that's what it means to take an accounting. So, in order to try and explain what the pnimius of the Torah, what the inner dimension of the Torah says about this, the Alter Rebbe drew a metaphor, which is not entirely his own. It's based on two things, and we'll discuss them in a moment, one from the Baal Shem Tov and one from the Zohar. Zohar we'll discuss a little bit less, I'll just mention it as we get to it. But this metaphor that is well known by now is known as the king in the field, because it's been made popular. But most people understand that the king in the field means that somehow Hashem is closer to me. And if Hashem is closer to me, that means that He's coming down, not that I'm going up. And what Shoshana said a moment ago is that if it's feminine, the whole direction of the feminine is from below to above. It's to ascend. So how is a metaphor of the king, meaning God, being in the field, coming into the colloquialism, into the field, into the simple places, how does that reflect me ascending? And rather, it seems to reflect completely the opposite. That God descends into my lowly situation. So clearly that wasn't the intent. The intent of this, what this seems to be the main point, that God descends into the field, into our simple lives, it's not exactly the main point. You might say that that's, in a certain sense, the result. But we'll see in a moment how this needs to be understood. So we'll begin just by focusing, and I'm going to tell you the whole mashal, the whole parable that the Alter Rebbe described. And I'm also going to put it in context of what the Baal Shem Tov said. And then, after we see the whole mashal and in its correct context, then I think we'll be able to discuss what it means that the king is in the field, really. Okay. So, first of all, what did the Baal Shem Tov describe? The Baal Shem Tov has a mashal that either he himself, a parable that either he himself told or was told by his direct students. It's not clear. And the parable that they say, that parable goes like this, that there was a city in some kingdom, and they were very far from the capital, and they had never seen their king. Try to imagine a time when there were no photographs, so you can't even do anything. You have no recognition of who this person is, what he's like. But, being that they're in the kingdom and they're very happy with their king, they love him dearly. So, they decided that they would send a group of people to the capital, and that group of people would come and report back to them what the king is like. So for that mission, they chose the smartest people that they had in their city, the philosophers, if you want, or the socialites, the people that could best grasp what they were about to see. And they sent them to the capital city. After a few months, they came back. They had a big town meeting, and it lasted for days, and they described more and more and more of what the king was like. And the people felt that they were now closer to their king. But after a while, this wasn't enough for them, and they decided that they needed more. The descriptions were all very good, they were very deep. They made them feel like a good storyteller, they were almost there, but it's still not what they were looking for. So they decided to send a second mission of people. This time, instead of sending people who had words, who were articulate, they sent painters. So they send the painters to the capital city, and they're received by the king, and he welcomes them, and so on. They stay with him for a few months, and they paint everything that they see. They paint what the king looks like, what his court looks like, what it looks like when he sees foreign dignitaries, what his meals look like. They paint everything. So they come back after a few months, and they're carrying hundreds of paintings, and they have a big art exhibit, and everybody comes to see this, and wow, it's very, they feel much, much closer now to the king. They already have a lot of wordy descriptions. Now they have pictures. And this feeling that they had received what they wanted, this lasted for a while. But then they decided that it still wasn't enough. So this time, they sent a mission with one purpose, to bring the king to them. And for this mission, they sent simple people, just people that could reflect and tell the king how much they really respected and loved him and cherished him, and everybody wanted to meet him. So they went to the capital city, and they were received there, and then the king said, I have a busy schedule, but okay, here's the dates I can go. So after a few months, they come back with the king in tow. And everybody meets him, and now they feel that they really know who the king is. And they really foster their relationship with him. What is this a parable for? It's for the stages of development or revelation of Torah. Meaning, says the Baal Shem Tov or his students, that in the beginning, in order to know Hashem, we only had philosophers. Philosophers like the Rambam and Rasag, and the Kuzari, Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, and Rabbi Shlomo Ibn Gvirol, many, many philosophers. They use philosophical language to describe what Hashem is like. And you can get some idea of who you have a relationship with. But if you're not a philosopher, you can only connect to it so much. If you are a philosopher, maybe you get very deep things from it. But most people can't completely connect. The second stage was what we call Kabbalah. Came the Mekubalim, and based on the prophets and all the prophecies that they had seen, all the parables that the sages had said, they built pictures of what Hashem is like. So Hashem is obviously not something you can picture, you can't make a picture of him. But their descriptions are far more alive for the regular person. And so people enjoy reading this. They enjoy reading Medrash. They enjoy reading Kabbalah, even for the layman. Why? Because it gives you a certain sense that you're connected. But that still wasn't enough, because still God is very far. Even if it's a good description, it's still not a person-to-person, a face-to-face relationship. So says the Baal Shem Tov, that's what I came to do. I came to not to tell you about the king and not to draw the king, but to bring the king himself to you, so that you have a direct relationship. And that direct relationship, that's what Chassidut is. It's not about giving me it's not about giving me another description, whether it be in words or in images. In the end, it's a direct relationship. It's a direct relationship in the sense that every single moment I feel that Hashem is standing with me here. It's not that there is Hashem somewhere, who knows. The parable from the Alter Rebbe that is so famous about the king in the field starts from that point, that the king is coming. He's coming to the city. That's what it says. It says he's coming to the city, and almost like it's called in Hebrew kafto v'perach. It interlinks so strongly together, these two stories. It almost seems like it's mamish continuation. So the king is on his way to the city, and the Alter Rebbe picks up the parable. And he says now, when he's on his way to the city, they don't wait until he arrives inside the city. They go out to greet him in the field. Right? The people of the city who sent this mission to bring the king, so they go out into the field to greet him. Because it's only proper. But it's not only because it's proper, it's also because they yearn for him, they long for him. So they don't want to wait until he comes into the city. By the way, what day was he free? What day is any Jewish king free? There's only one day. Either Shabbos or Rosh Hashanah. Again, Shabbos is one day, Rosh Hashanah 2 days. So it also makes sense that the day he's coming into the city, the day that he's showing up, is Rosh Hashanah. That's what the Alter Rebbe is meaning to say. That you get to see the king on Rosh Hashanah. That's the day that he becomes the king. But in preparation for that, you go out into the field. And then when you go out into the field, he says, he shows, and this is the key statement, Mareh panim sochakot lekulam. He shows a friendly face to everybody. Now this word, the key is not the friendly. The key is the face. That he shows his face to everybody. What does it mean to see somebody's face? So in English, the word face is usually the external side of it. It's a face of some, right? The face of a cube. The cube has 6 faces. But in Hebrew, face also means something else. Pnimiyut. He shows his inner aspect. It's a big deal in Hebrew. Why is it that the face shows the inner aspect of a person? It was just a couple of Shabbos ago, somebody in shul said to me, "Don't you think that person has a terrible face? He looks mamish like he's some kind of a murderer." So I said, I learned from a medrash that Moshe Rabbeinu had his portrait painted when he was in Kush, and this was sent to some deep psychologist who looked at it. And he said, I have never seen a person more corrupt and terrible than this portrait paints. I've never seen anything so terrible. So what does that tell you? It tells you that the face is mamish a mirror.
It tells you that the perspective is honest.
That's what I'm saying. That the face is mamish a mirror. If you see
Of the inside.
no,
of
a mirror of
yourself.
yourself. It's very hard. It's like but a mirror here is not. It's not completely a mirror. It's not that automatically you see yourself. It's like a pane of glass, and the inside is dark. What do I mean by dark? It's not because it's bad. Dark in the sense it's hard to see through it. It's hard to get through that initial reflection that you see. Like think about at night. If you have light here and it's dark outside, and you look at the window, what do you see? You see a reflection of what's here. You have to concentrate a lot to illuminate what's on the other side. Until you've illuminated what's inside, you won't be able to see what's inside. So the only thing you're seeing is yourself. So if you initially look at somebody and what you see is something negative, so that means that you haven't illuminated what's inside yet. You haven't worked on it. And when you work on it, both of them, they only see the extra.
You haven't illuminated what's inside of the person you're looking at,
Right.
but you can see if it's negative, you're seeing your own reflection.
You're seeing,
If
right,
negative,
you're seeing
you.
yourself. You're seeing yourself. And again, it's from the first initial contact. It takes time to illuminate somebody. That takes patience, as we'll see. To be able to illuminate something, you have to have a lot of patience. So we'll get to that as we proceed. But now let's continue with this. He shows a friendly face to everybody. So the Alter Rebbe says, what do you mean? What does it mean that he shows a friendly face? It means that the month of Elul is a time in which to see the pnimius of everything that I've done this year. That's what it means to do a reckoning. Reckoning is not just to take an accounting. Again, accounting is just superficial. It's just on the outside. What did I do? I did all these things. The question is, what were they for? What was the purpose of everything that I did this year? The fact that the king comes to me and he shows me his face, what is he trying to tell me? So to answer this question, you have to think about a feudal system. Feudal system has a king, and then there's all the people who live inside the city, and then the people are in the field are the people that support the crown, the people who make city life possible. Right, the farmers and the what do you call them in feudalism? I forgot. There's a name for them. Serfs.
The lords and the serfs.
Right. So, what are they doing? If you ask somebody who's a farmer in the field, what are you doing? He says, I'm sustaining my family. But if you ask the people inside the city, the king especially, what is he doing? He's sustaining me.
Who's me? The king?
The king. When I look at my life, what am I doing externally? I'm surviving. Huh? I need to work. I need to... Even when I daven, who am I davening for? For me. When I learn, who am I learning for? I'm learning for me. If I do something good for somebody else, I'm altruistic to a point, so it's because I want others to be nice to me also. But if you ask Hashem, why am I doing everything that I'm doing really? Because I'm sustaining Him, I'm not sustaining me. Again, it's a superficial picture.
I am sustaining Hashem.
I'm sustaining Hashem. That's what it means. Avodat tzorech gavoah. That the work that we do, even the Alter Rebbe quotes a verse from Eov after this mashal. He says, Melech lasadeh ne'ebad. What does that mean? Yes. That the king, ne'ebad with an ayin, that the king needs the work in the field. Hashem created the world in such a way that, we say it another way, le'maaseh yadecha tichsof, that He yearns for our work. Because He could have created the world any way He wanted, but He created it in such a way that His relationship with us will be like a king to serfs, in that sense. And if you take the external aspect of it, all you see is that you're supposed to somehow survive. But from Hashem's point of view, everything you're doing is building the city. Everything you're doing from beginning to end. He needs it, as it were. He created the world in such a way that He needs the toil. He doesn't need the toil. He could have created it any way He wanted. He could have created that there is no world also. But when He created the world the way it is, He's saying, I need you. He says that to us at Mount Sinai. He says, Moshe says to us, Hashem now made you into a nation, and you made Hashem into a king. You made Hashem into Hashem. Hashem is not Hashem if I don't recognize Him. Hashem's not, the whole kingdom doesn't work if I don't do my work. So what did I do this year? I got up, I worked, I wrote, I talked, I educated my children, did this. I look at the end of the year, stami. It's all. What's important about it?
Lived as a Jew.
So I lived as a Jew. So very nice for me. So, but what's the ultimate value? It's very hard for me. That everything that I told, the pnimius of everything that I did, even though it's these simple things like drinking coffee because I need to be awake now. That itself, Elul is a time to find the reckoning is not how I'm wrong, it's how even the simple things, they are all for the purpose of sustaining the kingdom. They're all for the purpose of making Hashem into the king. That also fits perfectly into the mashal, into the parable that the Baal Shem Tov taught. That we're like a city that's waiting for the king to come. Why do we love him so much? Because we feel that he takes care of us. So who are we? We're the feudal serfs, as it were. And again, it's even if you live in the city, so what do you understand? That you work for the government anyway. Right? The people inside the city, they're part of the palace. So they, in their consciousness, who are the people in the city? The tzaddikim. That they always have consciousness that every movement that I do is in order to sustain holiness in the world. Every movement that I do, it's to increase Hashem's presence in the world. That's somebody who lives in the city. But in Elul, even the people in the city go out into the field and say, there's even more than that. Even the simple acts that are done in the field that seem to be, for the people in the field, it seems to be that they're just sustaining themselves, these acts are really all to sustain Hashem. They're all to sustain the holiness. So there is no such thing as a Jew who's not holy. It simply doesn't exist. Because the very fact that you're in this world living, surviving, doing whatever you need to do, you're increasing Hashem's presence in reality. So that's how the Alter Rebbe really he explains it in the Maimer, but for some reason it's not fully explained all the time. So Elul is this feeling. The reckoning is not a reckoning of what was wrong, but rather how to elevate, and this is where the elevation comes in. That all the simple acts that I did all year long, they're not so simple at all. And they weren't just for the goal of sustaining my life, the life of my family. They are Hashem's life.
So you're saying we get to like spin it that way, even if that wasn't our kavanah? Like that's how Hashem's going to look at it, even if that's not what we had in mind?
Hashem looks at it that way anyway. The question is how you're going to look at it. Hashem knows the truth anyway.
I love this. So
Hashem knows the truth anyway. He's the king. Of course he knows that everybody is working for him.
Right, but if I don't feel like I've been doing everything for him, so how does that...
That's what it means to elevate things. That's exactly what it means. It's first of all,
So you're saying that's what I'm supposed to be doing? Or
that's what Elul is for. That's the cheshbon that Elul is for.
Can it is that retroactively to do with picture a year, and
Yeah.
even though we know in reality at the time we're not connecting our actions to Hashem, can we?
It doesn't exist though. You have to think about it logically. There's no such thing as an action that is not for Hashem. That doesn't exist. If you think there is something like that, then it means there's something outside of God. That doesn't exist. We'll deal with Averus in a moment. Okay, good. The farmer thinks he's good. He doesn't understand. Settle. It's because I'm too small-minded. I don't get the big picture. The big picture is this is all sustaining Hashem. This is what Hashem wants. It's not that some parts of it somehow are outside because they're in the field. No, you don't understand. The field is what sustains the city. The city is where the king is.
Could it be that if we, in Elul, if we elevated it, this idea, or
First of all, entertain it.
Oh, yes. That's for us. That part's
Okay.
for us. Hashem knows the truth and it happens and what he needs, he gets. So what we're working on in Elul, we personally benefit from,
Right.
right?
Right.
So let's see.
So how do we benefit? Because we're getting like the credit during Elul for recognizing that That's really what we're, like, I'm not.
So you're looking at it again. How much am I getting? Like, will I be paid more if I do this work also?
Exactly.
No,
That's
it's
my
not
point.
about.
You're
It's
saying
not about work. It's
it's
about
only
understanding the nature of what I've been
The way you
doing.
look at it.
It's not how much more money am I going to get in my bank account.
So why during?
It's
Elul,
what does
why
that
is it
money
about-
mean? What does my life mean? It's about meaning. It's not about getting something.
He's saying the cheshbon nefesh that you do in Elul is about this, not about what I do wrong here.
But what is the point then of
Me-
cheshbon nefesh during
Meaning,
Elul?
meaning. Okay, this very important word, that everything that I do has infinite meaning. It's not eating popcorn. It is, but it's not. Okay? It is drinking coffee, but because that coffee leads to everything that's connected to it, it has infinite meaning. I'm not a tzaddik. I can't drink coffee and feel that way. Because then if I could, I probably wouldn't drink coffee. I wouldn't be able to do anything. I'd probably be frozen. But Elul is 1 month that I can do that. On the past. I don't do it on the present right now. Okay?
Could
On
it
the
be
path.
for the purpose of the following year?
It allows the king to be the king. That's true. Meaning to understand that Hashem is king entails, by definition, that everything that happens here supports his kingdom. Yeah. If Hashem is not a king, so I live my life, you live your
But
life.
isn't it that if I tap into that in El, if I really do, then that will affect my coming year? for sure.
Coming, I don't know. It affects the fact that on Rosh Hashanah, I can say Hashem is king. I can't say Hashem is king if I feel that there's any of my actions that were separate from him, that were somehow void of meaning. Okay? Then he's not the king.
Okay.
Then I'm the king.
If that's
And I'm not such a great king.
Past Rosh Hashanah, what's Rosh Hashanah rush of? You know, I mean,
So, we'll get to that next year.
So could you say then our work for Elul is to, through looking at everything retrospectively,
Right.
to recognize that we did everything for Hashem, and through doing that, we'll be able to recognize Hashem as king on Rosh Hashanah.
Only then can you recognize. Because to be a king means that you are the sovereign. That everything that's done here is done for your
You're just
needs.
giving us a tool right now to be able to recognize Hashem as king.
A conscious tool. Yeah.
So how do you use this
Perspective.
tool with your al chayt and your slichas and everything? How do you go?
So if everything that I'm doing is to serve Hashem, so why did I waste time on things that do the opposite? They don't develop the kingdom, they hurt it. So I feel more responsibility also for those things. But I said we'd get to the Averos in a minute. Okay, so we'll get there in a second. We'll see how to treat them according to this mashal. Because in the mashal he mentions also what to do with the Averos. We'll see in a second.
More than what you're saying, if we look back on the year, we say everything I did was for Hashem. Can we also, if we're implying that this is what's going to crown him, for me, is it also would be okay to say that everything that I did is Hashem is responsible for making it happen?
So you're getting into the Averos already. We'll get to it in a second. We'll
You
get to it in a
actually in
second.
this book, I'm just curious.
Yes.
Am I actually reading from
No, I
here?
mean, is the
Not yet.
material, will I find it in this chapter of America?
No, not all of it. Some of it. Not all of it.
Deeply enough.
Of course, it's actually on marriage.
And I hope you're not going to say that.
No, I'm not going to say what. Don't worry
That's what
about it.
this course is, but it doesn't say it.
Okay. So, what we want to get to that this fosters patience. So I'm going first of all to explain it now in the small context of what we've seen so far. That you can't understand the meaning of something until you have a lot of perspective. Everybody knows that. The problem is that we want to immediately react. Meaning, when, I don't know, on the 15th of Tevis, 7 months ago, 8 months ago, I woke up late and I missed something. My perspective on the whole story at that moment was, this is all just terrible. And patience says that to really understand what this means, I'll only be able to understand 8 months later.
Sorry, when?
8 months later in Elul. Only then will I begin to have perspective on what I went through. So I don't know if everybody keeps and if this is saying that you should keep a journal about everything that happens. I don't think that's the point. Because, there's no end to it. But what is the general feeling in the end? Meaning, did this all bring me, at the end of the year, the Elul is this elevation of everything. Can I, during this month, do this work of elevating everything in general, even if I can't remember the particulars? At least that much. The patience means, first of all, withholding judgment. That's what it means. I have to withhold judgment. In Elul, I'll tell you if this was good or bad. My child did the most horrendous thing. So my first instinct is to discipline them the way I think they should be disciplined. So there's also suspension of judgment. So I'm not saying you don't say that something is wrong. You say it's wrong. But the larger context of how wrong this is and how much this might be part of a bigger picture, that I won't be able to tell until a much longer time. Why is this a feminine trait?
Patience is feminine?
It's feminine trait because without patience, you couldn't get through.
One diaper.
Through what? One day of what? Marriage also.
One day of galut.
No, what's the one thing that women do that men don't do?
I have a period.
Men also have periods. It's just in their heads. Pregnancy. You couldn't get through a single day of pregnancy if you didn't have patience. Because
No, I don't buy
for
that.
some women it's easier, for some it's harder. For my wife, for instance, every day was a disaster. And there's no patience to see what comes out in the end. Let's see what happens in the end. There's no so
You don't
so
mean
the
we can't live through it, because we all live through it, whether it's hard or not.
said it, but you see it, you feel it on your flesh.
It's a long time.
That it takes time to understand the meaning of something, even something that's happening inside of me. I can't understand processes until enough time passes. And you feel it. For a man, sometimes we see this, but it's not so clear and evident the way that giving birth to a child is. That in the end, it was worth having the patience. That experience is something very feminine. Men don't bond with newborn babies. And you don't feel that this intimate bond.
Is that true now? Now
the only
it's
thing-
very different. Men are becoming,
They're having babies.
no, they're not having babies.
So what I'm saying is, unless you actually have a baby, you can't understand that experience. You can't understand why it is that, like somebody who's had many, many children told me once, that the moment before you mamash swear I'm never going to be pregnant again, and the moment after you want another one right away. That's how she described it. That movement from one to the other is because you finally see the product of what you went through, what you did this for. So some men do, a few men have been able to, if that's what they're looking for, they've done a multi-billion-dollar exit, and so they've seen what they worked for. But there are very few of these. How many are there? It's not based on that. The patience in the world comes from child labor. It comes from pregnancy and the giving birth. And so that's why we say that Ima in general, the mother principle in general, is metinut. And here he calls it deliberation, but really what it means is being patient. Metinut, everything slowly. But there's an added element here that's connected to Elul, and that's how you say womb in Hebrew. Rechen, which means rachamim. That's why Chodesh Elul, the month of Elul, is called Chodesh HaRachamim VaSlichot. It's the month of rachamim. If its mazel is the woman, then its inner experience is one of a lot of rachamim.
Rachamim is male.
Rachamim is mercy or
On the
compassion.
right side, rachamim.
No, it's in the center axis. It's
So it's not woman if it's in the center.
There's different types of rachamim. There's a rachamim that comes from patience. And patience fosters mercy or compassion. In other words, patience might be what in psychology I might call being able to suspend my judgment. But what I have to exhibit or experience internally, what I exhibit to myself, what I see in myself, has to be something deeper called compassion. Meaning to be able to really be patient with somebody else, I have to have incredible compassion on them.
You know, this reminds me of like when Hashem held the mountain over our heads and we said, we'll accept. So it's kind of the same thing, like you're saying that we have patience to the pregnancy, but once the woman becomes pregnant, it's like out of your hands.
That's
And
right.
giving birth, it's so out of your hands.
It's
to
not
say,
patience.
I have patience.
No.
I mean, it's so out of my
I
hands.
think
So
the same one.
I'm
You
not-
feel you're being dragged through the
No,
experience.
just that
You suspend it. You
so
suspend
odd.
patience. You don't need
Like,
it. It's
I
you
guess
haven't got a choice.
I just had to go along with the
Basically.
ride.
Most of the good things in life are learned when we don't have a choice.
So-
who said that?
I just
knew
did.
I knew you were going to say that. Say it again.
No, it's just my experience in life.
Discipline of
That
patience,
the good things that I've learned were not of my own choice, not because I chose to learn them. They forced on me. But that's exactly what I mean. That this is all for Hashem. That this is all, in that sense, preordained, if you want. It's preordained that I learn this. If I was a woman, I'd also learn patience. But if not, so I have to learn it from a book. I have to begin to understand what this means. But the good lessons, the ones that really affect us, are not learned by choice. They're learned because we're dragged through them. Nobody would choose to be ill. Nobody would choose to can go through hardship. Even if I promise them everything, it's not worth it. So when you're dragged through it, you learn the biggest lessons in the end. Okay, so I want to get to this point of rachamim and to give it an image, not just to leave it as words, but to associate this with an image. Why is the womb called rechem in Hebrew? What does it do?
It can nurture and grow.
So nurturing is not the womb. Nurturing is usually the shilia. How do you say shilia in English? I forgot. Placenta.
Enfold.
Oh, contains. What does it mean? It gives it what? It gives the child what? Space. That's the word. The womb gives space because it pushes everything else away. Basically, that's what it's doing. That's if you want, the essence of what it means to be patient. To be patient is to give space. So some space is time, but a lot of space is just space here. The longest days of the year are in Elul. Or not. The longest days of the year are. But from my consciousness, that's where it comes. There's a name for this in Hebrew. It's called arichut apayim. To be patient is to be erech apayim. To have a long nose.
What?
Slow to anger.
Or
how they translate it.
that's how they translate it. It's a quality of one of the 13 principles of mercy. It means having a long face, really. That's what it means that Hashem shows me His face. His face is long.
Yeah, why is
Not a
that?
long face is. I don't know why in English a long face means you're sad.
Represents the af is anger, so you have to keep it like
What it means is really
keep it long so it'll have warm exposure.
that I have all the time in the world. I have a long time, long face. It's going to take a long time to figure out exactly what this means. But that's the symbol. The symbol is that when I need to be patient with somebody, I can picture this as if I'm giving them a womb, meaning I'm giving them space. both in terms of time and in terms of the place that they're standing. Sometimes it means forgetting about something. It's like concealing it. I don't want to deal with it right now. But really it has to come from this compassion, this feeling of compassion. And that's what Elul has. That's its special ingredient, its secret ingredient. That there's a lot of rachamim, it's chodesh rachamim. And it comes because its mazal is this woman. And she gives us this power. It's like Hashem is revealing himself that way. And he said that the zodiac sign of Elul, so it's called a Betula, but really it's just a woman. And it's not just any woman, it's a mother figure.
Well, she's a virgin.
So don't.
Isn't that the meaning of Betula?
Sado, there's a lot of meanings. So we don't have time to get into it now. They're all correct. I can say it the other way, that's where this whole image of a woman who gave birth being called a Betula, that's exactly where the people got their crazy ideas from. So it has to be cleansed. What that means, again, it's like the feeling that even though I just gave birth, it's like I've never been pregnant at all, ever. It's a feeling of renewal. But even more importantly than that, it's not just my renewal. She's giving other people the possibility of renewal. What is that called? It's called Nafla lo tosif kum betulat Yisrael. That the Knesset Yisrael, the mother of the Jewish people, if you want. So she's called Betulat Yisrael. And in Eicha that we read in Av, in preparation for Elul, it says that she fell down, she won't get up again. It's a pasuk that we say, Nafla lo tosif kum Betulat Yisrael. That she's fallen and she can't get back up. So that's how you read it in Pshat. But in Pnimius, how do you have to read it?
Is it like tshuva? Is it like...
Nafla lo tosif. She will never fall again. Don't fall again. Nafla lo tosif. Al tosifi lipor. Don't fall again. Kum betulat Yisrael. It's like get up. So even if you've fallen, what is that like? Sheva yipol tzadik v'kam. That you look at the tzaddik, what is the feeling? The feeling is it doesn't matter how many times I've fallen down. Get up. Why? Because if you get up and you think you're going to fall again, maybe you'll stop getting up. But the feeling of renewal is one that this time it's for good. This time I'm getting up and that's it. That's really what it means to renew. Otherwise, it's sort of like I'm cheating, lying to myself. I have to be adamant in my. It's a command. Get up. Get up, not in the sense to get ready for another fall. You've finished falling. That's it. It's the end. That's from Eicha, from Lamentations.
So in the Nevi'im? No.
Eicha, no, it's Ktuvim. It's from the Megillah that we read on Tisha B'Av.
Yeah.
So she's the zodiac for the Elul.
Right. What is she doing? She's standing up in the zodiac also. She's standing up. That's how you see her. That's how they imagined her in the sky. That she's standing up. What is she doing? So there, she's theoretically cutting wheat or something like that. She's with a sickle in her hand. So it doesn't matter.
Where
Okay.
did the image go?
When they looked in the stars, that's what they see. You have to see enough stars to in the city. It doesn't work. But if you look at the sun, you'll see it. It's pretty clear. It's not so vague. Okay. So now we have to get to the Avirot. Because everything we said so far is just how to treat things that are, in a sense, stami. How do you say stami? Banal. Like they have no meaning. Like my life has no meaning. What is that? I just go through them. It's just the same all the time. Same old. So that, you're right. If you have no context, if you're being part of something bigger, if you don't understand that you're the serf in the field, you're not really a serf. It's just that you have to go out sometimes and do that also. You're in the city. Certainly when you're learning Torah, certainly when you're davening, then you have at least some awareness that you're in the city. So that only deals with the things that are, they just seem to be stummy, they're banal, they have, But what about the things that I really did wrong? How do I fix those in my head? And if I remember them, what do I do with them? So the simple idea is, I have to do tshuva. How do you do tshuva for something that you did wrong?
3 steps.
Which are?
To regret it, to say I'm sorry and never do it again. Is that it?
Okay. So past, present, and future.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a very important stream in Chassidus that was most openly spoken about by the Mea Shiloach, by the Ishbitzer. But actually, I don't know how it was treated in Chabad in previous generations, because I haven't really seen direct reference to it, although the Rebbe gives a lot of sources, but I haven't gone through them, so I don't know if they say the same thing. But the Rebbe himself adapted what the Mea Shiloach said, and with a lot more intensity even. He made it even deeper. What does the stream of Chassidus say? It says that in the future it will be revealed that no Jew ever sinned. There's never such a thing. No such thing. It doesn't exist.
Always, as always.
I don't like that expression, etc.
That's not question, it's a question.
I don't
Say
like
in
the
the future it will be
expression.
seen.
expression.
Is that the-
Oh, of
is that
course
It would be
I don't
revealed.
like it.
It will be revealed.
And every Jew.
Why do we say in the future? Because future, when you say future in Torah, you don't mean something that will happen in 2 months, or in 2 years, or in 200 years.
Days to come.
You really, in Torah, time
Mashiach.
is a measure of your psychological movement. It's not a measure of some atomic clock somewhere. Meaning, the future means when you're ready for it. If you're not ready for it, like for instance, there was a Jew who said this almost 2,000 years ago, but he said it in the wrong way, and he said it in such a way that in the end it didn't fix the world, it ruined the world. You can guess who this person was. In any case, David says, "Chatati negdi tamid." My sins are.
But then whoever says that David chata,
Said it. That's about David, but not to say that no Jew ever
In the
sinned.
world.
Okay. Anyway,
You want to tell us what we just
it's not
it's
for.
called Oto Aish. I don't want to
No,
say
no.
his name.
His later helper. No.
That's
Anyway,
the-
let's
that's
get.
the-
Things have to be said in such a way that they cause you to become a better person. If they don't do that, and they take you backwards, it means it wasn't time for it yet. You're not in the future yet. You're still in the past. You're not ready for it yet. Okay? So, the Rebbe apparently thought we were ready for it, because he says it
He was a
in the most open way. So where does this story start? It's in our week's parsha, this week's parsha. This week's parsha, there's a mitzvah that if a person is chayav misa, that he has to be killed. So you have to hang him up afterwards. No, not the just anybody who's chayav mita.
Until Shkia.
Until the shkia, and then you take him down. You take the body down and you bury it. Why? Why do you hang it from a tree? So, in Pnimius it means that you have to understand that the reason anybody would sin in this world at all is because of the tree. Which tree are we talking about?
Wow, from
The
God.
tree of knowledge. Tree of knowledge of good and evil. Because good and evil became mixed up. So I'm saying that really understand that the whole reason that we don't believe that he's really evil. we believe that the whole reason that this happened was because of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So we put him on the tree. In Hebrew, liplot mashu, to hang something, means to ascribe it to. Meaning, this is the reason for it.
This is what they
So it's
hang by it.
v'talita oto al etz means that you should give the responsibility to the tree. Understand that if he was chayav misa, he did such a terrible thing, he murdered, whatever else he did, it wasn't because he's evil at heart, but because evil and good are mixed up in this world, because Adam ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
So the tree is the ultimate.
So the
scapegoat.
tree is the reason for it.
Is it
But
a-
what do you mean? What kind of scapegoat is it?
I mean,
Can't be
well,
responsibility.
the tree's
What did the
fault.
tree do?
I didn't do anything wrong, the tree did it.
What did the tree do? He didn't do anything.
The tree sinned.
How did he
Tree
sin?
sinned?
It didn't.
No, it's not connected to the tree of the good and knowledge, but it's not connected to that tree. What did that tree do?
I thought
It never did
human
anything.
beings have.
It's even more than that. What tree was it? So if it was a fig, or if it was the vine, or it was chita, it was wheat, these are all from the Shivat HaMinim, the fruit that Eretz Yisrael was blessed with. It's a good tree. It's not a bad tree. So what do you want from it? Why are you saying that it's responsible for everything?
Get it out of the middle so God can.
So obviously responsible here doesn't mean that he's responsible in the sense that he did it. It's something else. It means something else. But that's what you ascribe the sin to. Meaning somehow all the sins in the world are because we ate from that tree of knowledge. That's a mitzvah in this week's parsha.
To do what?
So how do we understand?
To hang your
It says that you have to hang
Got
him.
it, okay.
Not that it's not
Not the way what he
it's
done?
not connected to him. It's anybody who's chayav misa.
Anyway.
Whatever he did, doesn't matter. Okay, so to understand this, we have to hear a story. And the story is that the Arizal, he was 31 years old, and he received a message from Hashem that he had to move to Tzfat. At the time, he was living in Egypt. He was born in Yerushalayim, but then his father died, and his mother, in order to survive, she moved to Egypt to be with her brother. And that's where he grew up. And in general, he grew up, he tells about himself later that he spent his many, many years on the banks of the Nile in a hut by himself, and that's where he learned. But eventually, and he taught some people there, but we don't know very much about what he taught and how he taught. But eventually he was told to go to Tzfat. And he came to Tzfat on the day that the greatest sage of that generation passed away. His name was Rabbi Moshe Cordovero. And the Arizal, when he came there, he mamish came to the Levaya. He didn't know that this was going on, but he participated in the Levaya. He was 31 years old then. And he says afterwards that he saw the pillar of fire over the Ramak's body. And that's a sign that he's supposed to be his successor. And he was. And then he waited a few more months, and then Rav Chaim Vital came. And then he started teaching, and he didn't teach very long. He only taught for about 18 months, and then he passed away. That was the whole story. But during the Levaya, apparently he said a hesped. he said something. What did he say? On the Ramak. He said, he quoted the pasuk from this week's parsha that describes what we just said. It says, Ki yeh be'ish chet mishpat mavet. If there is a person who has a sin that has a mishpat mavet, that is punishable by death, v'talita oto al etz. You shall hang the body up on a tree. And he darshaned this on the Ramak. What's the connection with the Ramak? So he said, no, that the Ramak was such a holy person that the reason that he died, v'talita oto alet, he had no, he reads it like this, ki yeh be'ish chet mishpat mavet. Chet, what does chet mean in Hebrew? Lack. It means the lack of something. Okay? So, if there's a person who doesn't have, that's how he reads it, doesn't have a mishpat mavet, who is not supposed to die. He has no mishpat mavet. It's the opposite from how we hear it. So why did he die? Why did this holy man pass away? V'talita oto aletz. You ascribe it to the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That the only reason he passed away, the only reason he's, as it were, punished, if you want, because death is something terrible, right? It's not because he did anything wrong, but because we ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And Hashem said to Adam, the moment that you eat from this tree, then motamut, you will die, surely. That's what he darshaned.
How can a person know who has a judgment to die and who
Said
doesn't?
it, he saw this man, because he saw the pillar of fire. Said this, it's a big...
Such a big sign he
it's
didn't
a-
deserve to die? I mean, such a
Okay,
big
because
sign.
why? Said but it should be over already. What is this? So the only reason is because there's a decree from Hashem. That's the only reason. Now let me explain this word, the decree from Hashem, what I mean. Is the serpent guilty? Is the serpent responsible for our eating from the tree of knowledge?
Can't give him, blame him either, really.
Why can't you blame him?
Because we did it, it was our
Yeah, but
choice.
Hashem gave the serpent a certain
Yeah,
nature.
he was a Sharia permission.
Said it, but he didn't do anything. He's very different than the tree. The tree just stood there. The tree didn't come and say, please, 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 come eat from me.
He spoke falsehood.
Ken, he lied to me. The Yetzer Hara is responsible, there's no question. But the tree is not responsible. You can't say he's responsible. They're very different. The Yetzer Hara, the serpent who can sweet talks me and misleads me and causes me to sin, he's mamish responsible. But about the tree, you can't say that he's responsible. So what is the tree? He's an agent. He's not. He's like a. Well, he's an innocent bystander. But he's part of it, but has no conscious role. It's also one of the reasons why he's a tree and not an animal. Okay, the animal already you can talk about volition. You can talk about some kind of will. But about the tree, what are you going to say? What did he do? What did he do wrong? So why did Hashem involve him in the first place? Why did Hashem involve the tree in the first place?
Future.
Why?
For the future.
So the answer is we don't know.
The Nachash is an agent also. He could have
No,
been an agent.
he's a free agent. He has free will.
Ah,
He has will. He wants something. What does he want? He wants to mislead me. The Yetzer Hara has free will. He's- But the tree doesn't. It's just standing there. So why did Hashem do this to him? That's what we call being set up. Being set up is only if you had no free will in this. Meaning and that's what it says, Nora lilal b'nei Adam. Hashem wanted there to be, for whatever reason that we don't know, He wanted there to be death in the world, for now. And why He chose to involve the tree, we don't know. He's like, but the tree did something wrong? No, He didn't do anything wrong. So what is this? In the end, this is where I ascribe it back, not to the tree, but to Hashem. In a place where there was no free will, so what do I say about everything that happened here?
set up that plan.
It's a setup. It's a setup, but it's not. In the end, everybody hates the tree of knowledge, right? Because look at what happened because of the tree of knowledge. But it's not true. He never did anything. He just stood there. He had fruit. He's actually a blessed tree. So he's just standing on the.
Is this related to Ari Miklat?
To?
Ari Miklat?
Also said it. Could develop it in that direction, but let's finish it here. In the Talmud, it says there were 4 people who only died because of the serpent. Okay, it says that Yishai and Binyamin, and I never remember who the other 2 are. I'll remember in a second, maybe. But there's 4 people who only died because of. But it doesn't say because of the sin of eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. What does it say? Be'etiyov shel nachash, which means because of what bad advice the serpent gave Adam. It's blaming the serpent. It's not blaming the tree. It doesn't even call it the sin of the tree of knowledge.
You say there's 4 people who died because of the snake?
Because of the snake, meaning that they had no averos, they never did anything wrong. It's similar, but it's not the same thing.
But he
Right?
didn't, we don't know that he encountered more than Adam and Chava was, that he...
No,
They
it's
say
saying that
because
they
of that,
died
because death
not
came into the
because
world.
not because they did something wrong, but because there's death in the world. But there, the Talmud
I see.
describes it to the snake.
Okay, fine.
The Arizal, who's the Pneumius of the Torah, he doesn't describe. He could have used the same wording. Why did the Ramak die? Like it says in the Talmud, Beit Yoshan Nachash, because of the serpent. But he chose to do a new medrash on a verse that nobody had learned this way before. And he said, no, it's because of the tree. Why?
It eliminates any negativity.
With the snake, you can at least say that the snake introduced, there is some Yetzer Hara in these people, and even though they never did an Avera, what did they do? How can you not do an Avera and still be dead? What is that called?
A miracle.
It's the opposite of a miracle. There's one thing that if you do, your life is not life. Whose life is not life?
A sad person? Like a...
That's sad. No, a person who never did anything, but his life is not a life.
A poor person?
Not poor. We've learned this for 7 years.
Someone who can't like...
Who has a feeling
No
of
self-love.
gaiva. Somebody who feels hubris. His life is in life. It doesn't matter if he never sins even once in his life. His whole life is one big painful event. And nothing. Who tried to show that? Reb Nachman in the Chacham and Tam, the wise man in the Tam, he tried to show that you could be a very wise person, never sin in your life, but every single moment of your life is one big painful moment. Everything. Why? Because nothing is to your liking. Even though you never say anything to anybody, but you're constantly in pain inside. Because it should have been like this, it should have been like that. The gaiva, the feeling that I'm so much more than this, that sense of hubris, it destroys life. So when the Talmud says they died Beit Yoshan Nachash, what does it mean? It means that even though they never sinned, but they still suffered from the venom of the snake. And the venom of the snake is the feeling that I am super important. The venom of the snake is a feeling of self-importance, of self-aggrandizement. That's what the snake wants you to feel. That you're the most important thing. You should be like a god. What do you mean? You are a god.
Isn't it true that most people who feel like they're full of themselves are really don't see their own value and are really the opposite? Isn't that true in reality?
We said that, we've talked about this 1,000 times. There's no difference between the two. Whether you say you're nothing or you say you're everything, it comes from the same source. It's all about you. It's what you want. You want to talk about you. My wife just earlier this morning was listening to a class from Manis Friedman. So he presented it very nicely. In the end, everybody who has problems, all they can do is talk about themselves. When they don't realize that the only way to come out of your problems is to put yourself aside. You're not important. He told the story about this one girl who was in Beis Chana or Beis Rivka in Crown Heights. She had terrible, terrible problems, psychological problems. And then they were doing some event, and she was stuffing envelopes for 4 hours straight. And somebody came to her and said, "Take a rest." And she says, "I don't want to take a rest." She says, "Why?" "Because it's the first time I felt good in years." And when she thought about it, the reason she felt good was she wasn't thinking about herself. Most people are workaholics because they run away from themselves. So it doesn't matter whether I run away from my being the worst person in the world, the most important person, it's all the same. the self-involvement, you shall be like gods, Yodei Tov V'Ra, know good and evil, you know everything. The person who feels that he's the worst, of course, also knows that everybody else is better. How do you know that? Because he's an authority on everything. It doesn't matter what your self-image is. The important thing is that you have a self-image. That's all the snake wants. And he turns your life into a Gehenna from beginning to end. So that's what we've talked about for 7-8 years already. The one thing you shouldn't have is self-image. For God, it's not important. It's
Some
just
people,
not.
they always blame others.
So that's the one who feels that he's the greatest. By the way, the person who thinks he's the worst also blames everybody for what he is. Doesn't matter. I'm very intimately familiar with somebody like that myself. So everybody has that. Everybody has that thing. You have to. The only way to fix anything in yourself is, first of all, to leave yourself alone. First of all, give yourself a rest. You're not so important. So anyway, getting back to this. So says the Rebbe that in the Talmud, when it says that these tzaddikim died by Yosha Nachash, it means they still had self-image. They still felt themselves. And that's why they died. Because the Nachash, what he gave us, we've talked about this many times, I'll say it again, you'll all feel that this is new, but I promise you we've said this. It's a beautiful thing in Hebrew. How do you say an experience in Hebrew?
Chavaya.
Chavaya. Where does that? It's a modern word. It comes from chava, but in Aramaic, what does chavaya mean? Chivya. Chivya is a snake. It's a serpent. Okay. So we've said this a lot of times that experience. The word experience is snake in Aramaic. That is what it is. Your experience of yourself, to have an experience, to feel yourself. That is the Etiel Shenachash. That is the advice of the snake, of the serpent. And when he gave that to Chava, he never talked to Adam. The snake didn't speak to Adam.
No,
He spoke to her, because she's more susceptible to this. So he spoke to her.
She wasn't commanded. He was.
So it doesn't matter, but she was more susceptible to this to experience. She wanted to experience. So because he came to her, it says that from then on, all her children have the venom inside them. Meaning, from that moment on, everybody who's born has this. You can't run away from this. You have to figure it out as you live. You're born with it. This experience of yourself. So you have to figure out how to solve it. Anyway, so to get to the point, the Rizal didn't use this image. He used the image of the tree. Why? Because he wanted to say something else. That the real culprit, as it were, the responsible party, is not the snake, it's the tree. But we just said the tree is not responsible, so what are you trying to say? So the Arizal really is trying to say that in the end, who's responsible? Hashem is responsible. That's what he's, because the tree is not responsible. He's just a bystander. Pun intended. He's just standing there. He's not doing anything.
So what's the point in knowing that Hashem is responsible? We don't have to feel
When you're ready for it, first you have to know there's a Yosh and Nachash. First you have to know that there's the serpent, and that's in you, and that's... First of all, I have to ascribe all the responsibility to myself, because I listen to the serpent. I am the serpent. I identify with him. I do whatever he says. But after that, the pnimius of the Torah, what that teaches me, and that's exactly what the Alter Rebbe tries to do in the Mashal, is that in the end there's an inner reason for everything, and that inner reason has nothing to do with you. You have to see the bigger picture. In the bigger picture, it's what we call a setup, which is a bad word, but it really means it's a play. Hashem has a reason why He's doing it this way. Even the Averas that I did, Hashem has a reason for why I did them. He has a reason. I don't know what it is. Doesn't mean that I'm not responsible. The first stage has to be that I take the responsibility. But the second stage is that He's really the one who's responsible. And I'm like the tree. I'm just an innocent bystander here.
So Hashem is responsible, so we don't have free will.
And that's what it requires. That's why you have to be very careful with this, because most people will when they hear this, they mamash flip it. They say, Hashem is responsible, and now I'm really free. And now I have free will.
But it's not really an oxymoron.
But it's completely the opposite. If you're willing to give up free will, if you're willing to mamash put that aside, then Hashem can take the responsibility. But to do that, the paradox in it is that first of all you have to accept all responsibility, as if I'm the only one who has free will here. So that's the paradox
Still
here.
holding both at the same time.
So it's one after another, because we can't hold both at the same time. We can't hold both.
Why not?
Because
like two open
a
windows
human
on a
being
human
can't
screen.
understand a paradox at the
You
same
can have
time.
open
That's
windows.
what we mean by a paradox. They can't contain both thoughts at the same time.
Why not?
I don't know why, because that's how our mind is.
Do-
When I say
don't you
th-
hold it?
what I'm saying now is false. So which is it?
Something can be true and false at the same time.
No, so that's not. I don't understand what that means. I can say those words. I don't understand
Why
what they
can't you
mean.
understand it?
Because that's the capacity of human logic. I can't understand
No,
it.
if
But I can
Hashem-
understand them one
Hashem's
after
setting
another.
up, and he's still, everything, he's responsible for everything, and yet I have to take responsibility. As if.
No, it's either this or that, one after
Why
another.
can't they both?
You can't do. They're both true, but not at the same time for me.
You're a man. Maybe that's the difference.
No, it's a
Are
human
we all
logic.
thinking we can do it?
No, he just
No,
said
yeah.
one after another, so
Oh.
we think that we can hold it.
You do one after another, like in any paradox. You hold one side, then you hold the other. You hold one side, then and the whole secret that the Baal Shem Tov revealed is that the highest things in the highest truths that exist are incomprehensible to the human mind, and the only way you can grasp them is by holding one side after the other. You can't hold them both at the same time. You can move 1,000,000 times a second between them, but you can't get them both at the same time. That's what a paradox
Also
means.
a tool, like,
What?
it's also a tool to get to.
Right, right. Understand that the highest truth of my life I can never fully grasp in one moment. It'll always
It
be.
feels more natural to get to the highest tool, which is, it's more natural to want to blame Hashem than to take.
Because Hashem is willing to do that. That's what happens in Yom Kippur. What happens in Yom Kippur? Hashem says, I forgive you. What do you mean? What do you mean you forgive me? Why do you forgive me? Why do I forgive my child when he does something wrong?
You love him.
So what?
Because he's not really
Compassion.
responsible.
Who is then?
He is. God.
When I forgive my son because he just did something terrible,
Because God was responsible for
I
him
said,
doing
because
it.
God was responsible. What do I feel?
You're responsible.
But I'm responsible for it. I didn't bring you up right. In the end, I understand that I gave birth to you. I was the one who was here all the time. And if you came out this way, so I did something wrong.
But Hashem
And I have to be
knows-
patient with you. It's a simple
But
feeling.
whose fault is it really?
When I forgive somebody else who's not my child, where do I take the patience to forgive him from? Because both of us are in the same world created by Hashem. In the same way that Hashem forgives me, I'm sure that He also forgives him. I take it from Him. I don't take it from myself. I didn't create this other person. But we're in the same womb. We're in the same place. We're in the same space waiting to be born as something more than what we are now. And it's going to take time, that's all. We're both in the same...
Isn't the plan of Hashem that we should do tshuva? Tshuva is such a high level, that's why we sin.
So again, there is this thing called regular tshuva, that I did something wrong, you should fix it. That's taking responsibility for it. But afterwards, you have to come to that second stage where it's the tree, meaning that this is just how Hashem wanted it. That's what the Mashilach and what the Rebbe mean when they say that it will be revealed in the end that no Jew ever sinned. What do you mean? They didn't do the Avera? They did it, but they weren't responsible for it. They were a bystander, like the tree was a bystander. And this was only revealed by the Arizal. It wasn't revealed by... In the Talmud they say, no, it's the serpent. Meaning they're ascribing responsibility. They're not saying he's an innocent bystander. The nigla of the Torah, the revealed aspect of the Torah, forces you to take the responsibility. The pnimius, the inner dimension of the Torah, tells you, reveals to you, that in the end everything is working for Hashem. Even those things that are against, that seem to be against at this moment. Yeah, but you have to have both. You can't learn just pnimius. You have to also learn Gemara. So which one is right?
We don't know.
So which one is right? No, they're both right.
That's why.
Because there is a level at which I have to take the responsibility. There's a level at which, you're right, Hashem. Where does the patience come from? The patience, again, comes from Hashem, from that level. That's also why you're patient with yourself. Why are we really patient with ourselves? Because, like you said, it's very natural for us to say it's Hashem's responsibility, it's not mine. But that means that we feel that we're inside Hashem's womb, right? Because we feel the rachmim, we feel constant compassion from Him that allows us to say, it's not so terrible that I did this. What is that? That's the feeling that Hashem gives me rachamim all the time. It's true, He does. He's mamash merachem. It's a very interesting thing. You have to think about it. Why is it that we're able to be lenient with ourselves? Where do we get that from? And by the way, a lot of people are not lenient with themselves. What does that mean?
Don't believe in
So what does that mean?
the faith.
Self-involved.
Okay, that they only see themselves. If I was able to see the larger context,
All this, right?
what?
Focusing on what you did wrong and try to be patient and all this, that's all me. So how are you supposed to do both, right? You're supposed to put yourself aside and be involved in the world and not yourself. But we're supposed to be being healthy and working on ourselves to be better and doing tshuva. And
Like I said,
everything.
the highest truth is a paradox. There's no one thing to do. The world is much more, life is much more complex than that. And the highest truth is that I work out and then I rest. I have to rest. I can't work out all the time. It doesn't work. I eat and then I
That's all
stop.
you need.
No, I'm just showing you that there's run and return in everything that we do. In our relationship with Hashem, there's also run and return. The run is I run to Hashem. He's responsible for everything. The return is I have to be responsible for what I do. It's both of them are true. One is the serpent and one is the tree. I have both dimensions in my life. Both of them make me who I am. I'm both a result of the serpent, of the Yetzer Hara telling me, and my listening to my Yetzer Hara and being responsible for what I've done. And on the other hand, I'm also a result of the tree, which is just that Hashem willed it this way. This is how He wants it. I'm saying that for most people, it's very natural to forgive themselves, at least for the small things. And the truth is that if they don't forgive themselves for the big things, it also comes from their Yetzer Hara. Because again, the Yetzer Hara just wants them to be self-involved, just to be thinking about themselves.
You're saying we are supposed to forgive ourselves or we're not?
So the general prescription in our generation is stop thinking about yourself in general, whether it's good or bad. That's what the serpent wants, self-involvement all the time. Think about the tree. I'm just a tree. Or if you're Paul Simon, you can sing, I'm just a rock. That's all, I'm just a rock. By the way, where were the rocks there? Okay, there's a serpent, there's a man, there's a serpent. It means there's a man, there's an animal, there's a plant. What's missing? The inanimate. Where was the inanimate there?
He was a rock star.
If you figure out where the rock is, you'll understand what the next stage after this is. Okay? There's another stage after, but we won't talk about it today. But to be patient, the whole idea again is that I have to see the bigger picture. And to suspend judgment requires me to connect with the same feeling of compassion that Hashem is giving in this month all the time. That's what I need to foster. That's what I need to grab onto. And then you can extend it to the whole year. You can extend it all the time. But in this month especially. Another unbelievable remez is that Elul equals Binah. It's not just that the zodiac sign is the woman. It's that the name of the month equals Binah.
Is Rachman Bina in it, isn't it?
No, here Rachamim is like the lechem, the womb.
Rachman is Yisod.
Rachamim is
The
Tiferet.
center axis.
Tiferet.
Rachman.
Tiferet. But here we're talking about Rachamim Rabim. But here it's called Rachamim Rabim, which comes from the Keter. It's something else. So I don't want to get into it right now because it's too technical. But the point is that let me read it from it here, just to finish it.
Is Rachamim in the middle and compassion's on the right?
Compassion and Rachamim
Are
is
the
the
same
same.
thing?
Rachamim is in the middle. He says there is Rachamim, which is
What's the right? It's
Chesed.
Hesed. So Rachamim and Hesed aren't the same thing at all.
No. Look at your Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov.
No.
What
Here.
did you mean when you said?
Let me just read this.
You got us off track.
It's called the antidote to anger. When one realizes that the rectification of others depends upon one's own self-rectification, one learns to be patient with them. Patience is the antidote to anger. The only legitimate object of anger is one's own evil inclination. As our sages teach, the only thing you can be angry at in the world, according to the Torah, is your own serpent. That's all. One should always stir up the anger of his good inclination against his evil inclination. With regard to others in general, and to one's spouse in particular, one must strive to assume the divine attribute of infinite patience. That's how he translates El Chapayim. Patience fosters one's ability to wait for conflict to resolve itself, to suspend judgment, and to continuously check one's tendency to respond impulsively. It is the key to avoiding the damage one inflicts on oneself and others when unable to control the responses of one's first nature, the first nature that we have. Why does he talk here about an impulsivity? Because that's what Adam did. According to the pshat of the Torah, if he would just have waited 3 hours until Shabbos, it would have been permitted to eat the tree of knowledge. Same thing with the sin of the golden calf, which is same thing also. If they would just have waited 6 more hours, ki boshesh Moshe lavo, it says. They were supposed to come in 6 hours, but they decided that they was late, then they wouldn't have sinned in the golden calf. It would have been exactly the state. They were in the state of Adam Arishon before the sin, before they sinned with the golden calf. Mm-hmm. It's impulsivity. It's this feeling that I have to judge now. That's also from Bina. It's called Mina Dinim Itarin. That from the Bina, from the mother, also comes these dinim. But they come from because there's no patience. And patience says it's always better to underreact than to overreact. Patience means give it time. You'll figure out in the end why this is the way it is. It's to suspend my judgment. Bina is dinim. Dinim means judgment. Meaning I'm so sure I know how to assess the situation. I have to be convinced that I don't know how to assess the situation. I can only understand that if I understand that Hashem has a reason for why this is the way it is. And I give it back to Him. Give Him the benefit of the doubt that He knows what He's doing. In that sense, you don't have to fix everything.
Right.
It's like sometimes. Sometimes it's like a feeling that I'd just rather be lazy. I don't have to fix everything. It's better to be lazy in that sense. Like it's procrastination. When it comes to anger, procrastination is the best medicine.
Productive procrastination.
There is productive procrastination in the soul, in the psyche. What is that? I don't know what the reasons are. I simply don't know. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
I was thinking of patience and chokhmah, to wait.
No, so chokhmah is the opposite. Chokhmah is rizut. It's called like yorek achetz. It shoots like an arrow. It's lightning. It travels very fast. But the ima, the mother, is dafka that there is a lot of time. There's not another class after this?
When he gets here.
I'm sorry, okay.
What do you mean when you said El was Bina? How do you calculate that? Does every meaning
67. Elu
Oh,
is 67 and Bina is 67.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aye.
Isn't there a pasuk that something about, you mentioned the cities of refuge? There's a
כן,
pasuk,
בסדר.
how does that go? About something about the cities
Ina
of refuge.
leyado v'samti lecha makom.
So what's the connection between Elul and the cities of refuge?
So a city of refuge is like a rechem. It's like a big, compassionate womb. So that needs a lot more discussion.
Issue as well.
Right. Ina leyado. That Hashem orchestrated it, and He killed by mistake. By the way, there's a whole thing about it. Whether the person whether it was manslaughter or murder, is not known yet. Anybody who murders, who causes another person to die, runs away to a city of refuge. After he's there, then they start the trial.
I see.
Only when he's reached the city of refuge can they start the trial and then decide whether he was responsible or not. What does the Rebbe do with this? He says it doesn't matter whether you did something by Mezid or you did it by Shogeg. In Elul, you find refuge in this idea that Hashem caused it in the end. You have to feel like Inna liyado. Inna means that Hashem. Again, you first have to take responsibility. You have to run to the city of refuge. But afterwards, there is such a thing as Inna liyado. Okay, so.